at bay. The iceman had gained the wall itself. Raucus felt his teeth clench in frustration and rage as the ape-like creatures swarmed over the breach in the defences. The largest of the brutes was as tall as an Aleran legionary, but far broader across the shoulders, far thicker through the chest. Their arms were long, with enormous hands, and their leathery hides were layered with a sparse coating of wiry yellow-white fur that could make them all but invisible in the frozen wastes of the north. Yellow-white eyes glared from beneath shaggy brows, and a pair of heavy tusks jutted up from massively muscled jaws. Each iceman bore a club of bone or stone in his hands, some of them edged with chips of sharp, unnaturally hard ice, that, like the cold of the winter itself, seemed to bend itself to the will of the savages. The legionaries rallied behind the crested helmet of a centurion, struggling to push forward and seal the breach, but the fury craftings that were supposed to keep the top of the wall clear of ice were failing, and their footing had become treacherous. Their foe, more at home on the slippery surface, began to drive the legion back into a pair of separate vulnerable elements, as more and more of their kind surged onto the wall. The yellow-eyed sons of crows were killing his men. The third Antillan had minutes of life left in it, and after that, the iceman would be through them, and that horde would be free to ravage the lands beyond. There were a dozen steadholts and 3 small towns within a few hours' march for the horde, and though the militia of every town along the shield wall was well maintained and diligent in its continued training, Raucus would permit nothing less. Against such an enormous number of the foe, they would be able to do nothing but die in a futile effort to allow their women and children time to flee. He wouldn't allow it to happen. Not to his people. Not to his lands. Antyllus Raucus, High Lord of Antyllus, let the rage boil up inside him in a white-hot fire as he swept his sword from its sheath at his side. He opened his mouth in a wordless roar of pure wrath, bellowing to his furies, calling out to the land around him, to his land, which for a lifetime he had fought to defend, as had his father and his father and his father before him. The Aleran High Lord screamed his outrage to the land and the sky, and the land and the sky gave answer. The clear twilight air boiled and blackened with storm clouds, and dark streamers of mist followed him in a spiral as he dived. Thunder magnified the High Lord's battle cry tens of thousands of times over. Raucus felt his rage flow into the sword in his hand, and the blade burst into scarlet flame, burning through the cold air in a sizzling hiss, lighting the sky around him as if the sun had suddenly risen back above the horizon. Light fell onto the desperate legionaries, and faces began to turn skyward. A sudden roar of hope and wild excitement rose from the legion, and lines that had begun to buckle abruptly locked into place again, shields binding together, firming, holding. It took a few seconds more before the first of the icemen began to look up, and only then, as Raucus readied himself to enter the fray, did the High Lord unleash the furies of his skies against the foe. Lightning came down from the sky in threads so tiny and numerous that more than anything they resembled burning rain. Blue-white bolts raked the icemen on the ground below the wall, killing and burning, sending icemen into screaming confusion, and suddenly choking the pressure of their advance onto the wall. Raucus flung his sword's point down as he closed on the exact center of the icemen's position atop the wall, and called fire from the burning blade, sending out a white-hot column of flame that charred flesh to ash and blackened bone in a circle 15 feet across. At the last second he called upon his wind furies to slow him, landed hard upon the unyielding stone of the wall, now cleared of the treacherous ice. Raucus called strength up from the earth, shattered 2 hurled clubs with sweeps of his burning blade, swept a wave of fire over 100 of the foe between himself and the southern side of the wall, then began grimly hacking his way northward. The icemen were no fools. They knew that even the mightiest fury crafter could be felled if enough spears and arrows and clubs were thrown at him, and Raucus knew it too.